Primary Catchmoon kit guns. Catchmoon is one of a variety of possible options for these custom weapons you can build in Warframe called kit guns. The different options you have for pieces fire differently depending on whether you pick a grip that makes for a primary or a secondary weapon. So in this case, Primary Catchmoon is a fully automatic weapon that fires piercing energy waves. I made a high fire rate one with a really large magazine, as you can tell from looking at the footage. Look, this is one of those gameplay gems where look at the weapon. Basically, I just think this is fun, and I wanted you to know about it. I guess this series is all like that, but these aren't necessarily build videos. The pieces with which we make builds in games are interesting and important to me. I think this is cool game design. A glorious rapid-fire energy bazooka. It hits enemies in line. It triggers headshot stuff, even if your aim is as bad as mine. It slices, it dices. Well, it does primarily heat and impact damage. Not a whole lot to say about the mods this time. I like to show builds like this early in the videos because there's not much to say about them. A lot of the time, it's just if you combine all of the different ways you can get more damage onto the weapon, you get solid damage. And in this particular weapon's case, I don't think there's a lot of stuff to build for that does something other than just make the weapon do more damage. Like, there's just not that much to say. I did choose to build viral here, and along with the innate heat, that is a nice general use combination of elements or damage types. Sometimes I use a anti-faction damage Grenier mod, but here the extra heat means I get that anti-armor status effect to help me a little more against the armored enemies I expect to have more trouble with. It's been good enough so far. Note that some weapons don't have a headshot multiplier, but can still score headshots, and Catchmoon seems to me to be one of them. You can trigger headshots for arcanes, for example, and as an aside, the main reason I use this is to conveniently score headshots when I want to use Pax Bolt in my primary slot. And when you don't need that, Pax Seeker is a very nice damage payoff if you can reliably get headshot kills. This weapon just makes that very easy. I do want to talk about galvanized acceleration briefly. The projectiles from the Catchmoon and all these energy wave type weapons have a set flight time. So let's imagine that it's 1 second. The projectile flies for 1 second and then dissipates. So if you increase its speed, the effect is that you get further range. It will fly further in that 1 second or whatever and then dissipate. And because this is a shotgun as well, it has damage fall off, and projectile speed also increases that. So you'll do full damage or more damage out to a longer range. Galvanized acceleration is a big effectiveness increase on this weapon. Again, in my opinion, not too much to say here, not a whole lot of interesting options for modding. Now the kit gun parts though, the pieces you make this out of, there's definitely some interesting trade-offs to be had there. So what I've done here is reconstructed it inside of the kit gun viewer. I thought that'd be easy to see. And what I picked here has very little to do with damage. It's just a really fast grip because I think it feels awesome to use. It's really good against lots of smaller targets. You can trigger those headshot arcanes really readily. It's just extremely satisfying to fire. And then a really large magazine, because if you pick the large grip, the fast firing grip, you're going to run out of ammo so fast. And the active firing time, the fire rate, magazine size to the reload speed, if you use the fast grip, is it's terrible. It's actually terrible. It's horrible. Now, this would be a lot more powerful if it was slower. And if you slowed down the fire rate and then were free to slow down the magazine without having to be reloading all the time, you'd be free to pick one of the magazines that gives you a lot of crit rate. And normally I think that is just about the best damage you can get if that's what you're looking for. You would suddenly free up a lot of options where if you had more ammo efficiency or again less fire rate from a slower grip or a way to reload faster, suddenly I'm much more interested in just min-maxing the damage. There becomes very little reason not to just use the parts with the most damage. Unusual for me here, again, my proposed build that I showed you a minute ago is really the more extreme version. It's not more powerful, it's worse, but I just think it's more fun. My main motivation was that I wanted a different experience out of a type of weapon I already liked, the energy wave firing thing, Archiplasma or Catchmoon. I ended up making this video because I saw so much enthusiasm toward this combination of parts that I chose when I used it during a live stream. I normally would have thought this was a pretty personal weapon that would be sort of irrelevant to a lot of people. These energy wave sort of weapons do seem to be fairly popular in Warframe, but I'll tell you, I didn't know how much I wanted one that shoots really fast until I had it. It seems some of you felt the same way. I think that's part of the trick with kit guns. Warframe has so many weapon options, it's kind of like None of these hundreds of things scratch that itch for you already? Really? You really need to build your own custom one, you know? And you'll forgive me, I didn't build like 50 different versions of this similar kit gun, but the kit gun system isn't extremely flexible. Like, a lot of the weapons don't feel too different, even if you make the most different versions of them that this system allows, even just looking mathematically at how wide the fire rates range, for example. Sure, having Catchmoon here fire fast does feel a little bit different, but it's not exactly unrecognizable from, you know, a slower Catchmoon or Archoplasmor. It's just really rapid fire, right? But I think the reason that I'm into Catchmoon in this case is that it's kind of more of a good thing. You fire something fairly specific, you know, these energy pulses. We get a few pre-made weapons in Warframe that fire that way, like the Archoplasmor. And then you let us flesh out that category if we want to, and really get into this type of weapon by building custom ones, by giving the option for us to build custom ones. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do custom weapons in a game that already has a lot of options. Options themselves, I was sort of ragging on before, are kind of nothing special in a game this broad, but letting the player create very specific versions of already existing things could be cool. You know, you can imagine in some other games how you could use this for interesting balancing. Maybe it's advantageous to have this type of thing hit fast, so there's a pre-made slow firing one that does better damage by itself, you know, to compensate for how hitting faster would have been stronger generally. The slower one gets a damage boost. But then you can also custom build a fast one or whatever to make for a unique synergy tool. Just, it would have lower raw damage by itself. Okay, so I did actually write all that into this script and not realize that's true already in Warframe. I'm describing Warframe. Some folks have already done lots of mathematical analysis to demonstrate that the slower firing kit guns have much better damage output, and the increased damage from the status output of faster kit guns is hard to calculate but likely doesn't catch them up. Now, as always on my channel, I'm not as interested in emphasizing the exact math. I find it more worthwhile to learn to estimate. And I'm not as interested in focusing only on what's the strongest in a vacuum either. I'm not in a vacuum. There are other interesting things to optimize for, besides pure efficiency, like comfort or some really specific effectiveness. But I love to think about those mathematical trade-offs too. I'm just not as worried about the exact damage. I do think it's interesting here since with equal base damage, faster firing weapons would usually be stronger in Warframe due to their increased status output and crit consistency. Part of why that might be reversed with kit guns is that many kit guns shoot fairly quickly and or output a lot of status, even if you make them as slow as possible. Even if you choose a loader that trades away status for crit chance, status is very free in Warframe a lot of the time, not much opportunity cost to getting decent status output. So maybe our developers seemingly sensibly increased the power budget for slower kit gun parts. You know, they made them stronger because the faster ones would have been stronger in just about every way otherwise. But then that ended up overcompensating for the weakness if the player just ignored convention and went for the highest damage regardless. All of this is to say that, again, you'll do more damage if you pick a slower firing grip, but I think my version is extremely satisfying, and we have a slower firing version at home. Folks, I present to you a gameplay gem, high fire rate, primary Catchmoon. It's one of only a few weapons I own that I do sometimes have ammo trouble with. Maybe play with it with a loot generating frame or something, or just swap weapons if you can bring yourself to stop using it all the time. I've been Xandy, thanks for joining me. Armed with this glorious weapon, let's see where we're off to next.